Welcome to another episode of Pop Culture Caballeros, the off-topic show where we talk about fun stuff, whatever we feel like talking about, and there's always lots of cool, juicy guests hanging about that we hopefully get to do various shows with this year. And I'm going to bring in a special guest in just a moment, but first a little introduction to who this might be.
Tonight on Unsolved Miseries. A man who was kidnapped by wild apes and forced to live with them while they got their damn dirty paws all over him. Imprisoned in a cell, he was visited by a microscopic race of subatomic weirdos. Making his escape into a so-called microverse, he encountered a jade giant and become a sidekick before last being seen in Japan piloting a giant super mecha robot and playing his quite possibly copyrighted theme song. Authorities are seeking any information you may have about this man. If you know the location of this man, call the number on your screen now.
If you know his location, let us know. Here he is, GOJITRON.
That is my actual true life story.
It is.
It actually happened.
Narrated by Robert Stack before they banned me off certain websites, and I have to use a stock voice, and I just went, it's the British version of Unsolved Mysteries.
Not sure how I feel about being described as a juicy guest, but I guess I'll take it as a compliment. Only the T-Rex will know for sure if I'm juicy or not.
He's chock full of blood. Okay.
How are you, Johnny?
Today, I'm pretty good. And I'll be looking forward to talking to you about some licensed comics, Marvel licensed comics. I mean, there's loads of companies licensed comics, Dark Horse, IDW and all that, but looking back at some old classic ones.
Yep. Marvel was the first comic company that really went hard into licensed
they went
comics
kind of
starting in the
gangbusters,
70s.
And there's a bit of nerd trivia down there. I mean, this one we're not talking about today, but just in the various ones there, the Wizard of Oz, that's like infamous for a particular reason, because both Marvel and DC were involved with it before any superhero crossovers.
Mm-hmm. I remember those Treasury editions. I missed them.
I wish I could get the Superman Ali. I mean, the original one cost a fortune, but they've done like facsimile editions over the years, and it's not. You don't want a Treasury edition down a little digest. It needs to be big enough to appreciate the artwork.
Right.
But yeah, because I have reprints of just like basic reprints, like the Superman, Spider-Man, and Batman Hulk, and that they did in the 90s with the gold borders.
Mm.
But I've still never owned any version of the Superman Ali one.
I still luckily have my original Batman versus the Incredible Hulk, the original Treasury, the big one.
Is it the same size as Ali? Is it as big as that, or not quite? Or
nope, it's the original. It's the big.
Yeah. So there's that same size. Yeah.
Yep.
Hopefully,
I'll be able to get it signed at a convention this year because the artist Jose Luis Garcia Lopez is coming to a convention near me. So I plan.
I'm glad you're saying he's coming to a convention, hasn't like passed away or something. I was hoping it was going to be the next thing that's out of your mouth. No, I love his art. He did those awesome 70s DC style guides, which supposedly they're going to possibly.
Yeah, the pre-order for that just went up. It's a $90 big hardcover book.
Yeah, I might get that. If it turns up on like Amazon or somewhere I can get good, basically free international shipping. If I can get it through Amazon, then I might grab it off there.
Mm-hmm. I recognize some of these guys.
Yeah. Plenty of reptiles and robots in there. Yeah, speaking of familiar faces, a bit of Hulk, a bit of Godzilla. It's been getting into it, hitting the books. Old Godzilla starting up hard.
Godzilla loves to read. Little known fact.
He sure does.
He's very well read. Godzilla and William Shatner, both very well read individuals.
Well, before you can destroy America, you need to find out where it is on the map. So you might want to read a map or a book, and before you can go on your world tour of destruction.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I'll bring up what have we got. The first, almost the first book. Actually, first we're going to show off these cool images you made a few weeks back, like the more AI images, but all these
messing around in AI.
And how did you get? Do you know which one you used for this? Because the comics look really cool. Where he's holding them, they're not the weird blurry images you often get.
I think I use does Bing have one? I think I use that one.
Yeah, that's the Microsoft one that just comes up as Bing AI or Bing Images or whatever. Like I usually have a bookmark. I use that fairly frequently to make like skeletal images and stuff like that. But yeah, I was surprised how cool they turned out. Just I love sitting and read all these books. You got Battlestar, Star Wars, Shogun, Transformers, Planet of the Apes. Don't tell anyone.
The fonts are usually all misspelt and jumbled.
Yeah. But they look good there. Like I can see it says Shogun Warriors, and most of the time the AI it adds extra letters or it misspells and does weird things. And like I did one today for like a Kenner Toys logo, and it has like Kenner with one N and weird spaces in it. Get on to our first of various comic choices here, and we just kind of pick ones that we like, ones that are fun. And Johnny being a weirdo, I picked a couple of strange ones that are like, why is this even in there? Because I just want to show off kind of how diverse the range of
weird is good. I enjoy weird.
Yeah, I enjoy a bit of late night weird, weird Bill. That's my cup of tea. So we've got a bit of an overview here, and then we'll get into our books and picks of fun stuff. So an overview of the Marvel licensed comics, and this is through like 70s and 80s is the glut. That's the majority of them. They continued into the 90s and had other ones as well, but the 70s and 80s were like a lot of titles, like over 100 different titles. So in the 1970s and 80s, Marvel Comics expanded its publishing efforts beyond its core superhero lineup by embracing licensed properties. You can see some of those monthly book pages back in the 70s where it's like that little checklist, or get a subscription. We've got Captain America, we've got Thor, we've got Conan. At one point, nearly half their range is licensed book. There were so many. These books covered a wide array of genres, including science fiction, fantasy, and action adventure. Marvel secured licenses for properties such as Star Wars, Conan the Barbarian, and various toy lines like G.I. Joe and Transformers, and which are, that was some of their most popular all-time licensed ones that ran for quite a number of years. These comics allowed Marvel to attract a broader audience and explore different storytelling styles and themes. They often featured rich world building, epic battles, and diverse characters, contributing to Marvel's reputation as a versatile publisher in the comic book industry during that era. And it's kind of like if they're publishing all their regular superhero books and then just went, give me a IDW or Dark Horse and just publish all of their books at the same time, as well as all your superhero ones. There's so many books they put out. The Curtis magazine's imprint was a significant part of Marvel Comics history, particularly in the 70s. While not as well known as some of Marvel's other imprints, and I don't see any reprints around today of this. I mean, some of the stuff, but not that brand. Curtis magazines played a crucial role in expanding Marvel's reach beyond traditional comic book formats. Curtis magazines primarily published black and white. Magazines often feature mature content targeting an older audience than typical comic books, which they did some of that with like horror stuff as well to get around the old comics code. These magazines covered a variety of genres, including horror, science fiction, fantasy, and martial arts. They allowed Marvel to experiment with storytelling styles and themes that weren't always suitable for the Comics Code Authority, which regulated content in traditional comic books. And that's an old marketing trick. It's like, well, we can't advertise these cartoons or toys, but we can make an advertisement for a comic book, and the comic book kind of advertising the cartoon for G.I. Joe and Transformers. There's always a way of like getting around something, and right. Do these mature stories we can't put in the regular book. We'll put it in a magazine, and the magazine's not a comic, so it's under the Comics Code.
Yep, they did that a lot with Conan, like you said, the horror comics, and late 70s when the Hulk was very popular on TV. There was also a Hulk black and white magazine as well that I enjoyed. Yeah,
they're fantastic books, and like it's a shame they don't sort of get reprinted so much these days, and that like kind of get forgotten about. But
they did a lot of them in the essential volumes, which made sense for the essentials because they were originally black and white.
That did make sense because they were black and white to start with. Like then I don't have a problem. But when they take color comps and put them into black and white, I'm just as annoyed as when they take black and white movies and colorize them. Like don't cross the streets. But and the various licensing stuff they had. The general Marvel imprint, just Marvel in the top corner was on lots of stuff like Elf here. And then we also had the Star Comics, which is more an 80s thing, and that was for like younger kids. And most of those books had like cartoons or toy type stuff. From up there, I can see Defenders of the Earth was another one.
Mhm.
You had Royal Roy, which basically I think there was, I'm not sure if it went ahead or not as far as the lawsuit, but there was a kerfuffle about that one of being a rip-off of Richie Rich, because it clearly was.
Yeah, all those first Star comics, you can tell that they were ripping off blatantly Harvey Comics.
Yeah.
There was another one called Wally the Wizard, which was obviously a ripoff of Wendy the Witch.
Yeah.
And Royal Roy was Richie Rich, and they were kind of skirting the bounds of
They
good
could
taste.
have at least gone, kind of changed up the names and the alliteration a little bit.
Right.
It's like just a bit on the nose.
Yeah.
But
So
at least we got Spider-Ham out of it, I guess.
Yeah. So those kind of rip-off comics were the first couple of years of Star Comics, and then they went heavily into all the toy tie-in licensed comics.
Yeah, and it's funny, like when you're younger and you see all these imprints and stuff, you're like, what the hell is Star Comics? And like, why is Spider-Man in there? I'm confused. Because they had a number of different licenses. What else they had in the sorry, not license, imprints. They had Eclipse, and there was the Jim Shooter stuff, and there was a New Universe. And it's just a smorgasbord of kind of there and gone imprints Marvel had through the 80s and that.
Yeah, early 80s when the direct market was expanding, they did a lot of experimentation.
I guess they did similar thing to what happened in the 90s. Like DC had Vertigo, and they're all trying to get into different little imprints and things, but they kind of, I don't know, sometimes they kind of muck them up. You should keep an imprint just what it is and don't try and muck it up with other things, Fuse people.
Yeah.
But yeah, Chuck Norris Karate Commandos, that's got to be the greatest Marvel comic of all time, I think. It's going to outsell Superman and Action Comics and oh, yeah.
I don't know. They did a comic about Animax, which no one remembers.
Yeah. I saw that title, but I don't know what that is. Was it a cartoon or a toy? Or?
No, it was a toy line. A very brief one-wave, blink and you'll miss it toy line. And Marvel did a 4-issue.
Did it have the weird mutants or animals, or what was it?
Yeah, it was like the mutant characters that had the vehicles that sort of matched what the characters were, like the Rhino.
Yes, I was looking at pictures of that a couple of weeks ago, and I was going, what the hell is this?
Yeah.
It looked pretty cool. The toys, I was like, oh man, this is something I would have liked.
I forgot a lot of these movie tie-in comics as well.
Yeah, they had quite a few movie ones.
Yeah.
I'm surprised by how much movie ones. I had like bloody Labyrinth and
2001,
Star Trek.
I think you have it here, but they did Dragon Slayer. They did a lot of them.
Yeah, there's a lot of one-off ones, and I mean, like, DC would do, whenever there was a Batman movie, they would do a Batman movie special, but it was always, pretty pedestrian. And I think a lot of these movie ones here are fairly similar. They're just like, give us the script and has something out, and it's just, it's just like an abbreviated version of the film.
Mm-hmm.
And we get not only James Bond, but James Bond Jr. as well. Like that's
Yep.
And you get Toxic Avenger, which is the movie, and then we also get Toxic Crusaders. So they had, such a variety of stuff. Doctor Who.
I wasn't even aware that they did Darkman.
Yeah, I didn't realize. I think I've actually seen Darkman in the comics back in the shop back in the 90s, but I definitely haven't read it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's funny how licensed comics went. They were so heavy into them in the 80s, and then in the 90s, Marvel and DC kind of focused on building their own universes with all the crossovers and events, and then all the licensed comics kind of migrated to Dark Horse and smaller publishers. And now it's coming back around, whereas Disney is consolidating all these properties, and now you see Star Wars and Aliens and Predator back at Marvel because they're all part of that Disney family now. Yeah,
I was reading Predator Marvel comics the other night, and it felt weird. I'm like, this is Marvel. There shouldn't be naughty blood and guts in here. What's happening? Actually, I had an A-Team as a kid, but it wasn't any of those American ones. It was like one of those UK annuals in the oversized book. Because I had, before I went to a comic shop, I had that as a kid, but before I even knew what Marvel Comics was. But it would have been a reprint of something from that Marvel series. Yeah, because I also had a Wonder Woman one that was like UK Annual 1982 or something. And I had them as a kid before I ever had any actual comics, and they were like hardcover reprints for the UK of different stuff. because stuff like that would turn up in Australia and New Zealand, like a bookstore or something. And I don't know why someone gave me a Wonder Woman book when I was a kid. I was like,
in the early to mid 80s, there was a comic shop near me when comic shops were becoming big, and they would import like 2000 AD and some of the British weeklies. So I picked up some of those, and I could see how they broke up the stories and reprinted them for the UK. So that was interesting.
Yeah, that was a big thing. The UK stuff, they would have the weekly short page things, and then like serials, you know, they would put a bunch of stuff together into one compendium or serial, and you get a bit of one story, a bit of another, which is like a lot of the boys comics in Japan, where you get a big volume of like a chapter of this and a chapter of that, and then next month you get, you know, you get more next month.
It was basically how we printed newspaper comics in the US.
Yeah,
like a chapter every week.
But yeah, it's pretty cool looking back and seeing, you know, they had A-Team, Star Trek, RoboCop, Thundercats, Masters Universe. I mean, not particularly good Master Universe comics if you do read them, but the DC ones were, I think, quite a bit better.
Ren and Stimpy down in the corner.
Ren and Stimpy were decent. Yeah, I'd read a few of those, and that was actually a reasonable book. We'll get on to the next thing, and first pick here is Shogun Warriors, which is a Goji pick, of course.
Let's take a bunch of unrelated anime and manga characters, take out anything that identifies them in Japan, smush them together, and make a new mythology in the US. And here we are.
And just the only other thing they need to do is get like a cattle brand for the American flag or something to stamp it on the shoulder.
It was very weird, though, see obviously Japanese-inspired robots in this sort of Western-centric story.
Yeah, it's very strange. I never knew about this book until a few years ago, because I mean, of these robots, like Combat La Vie, I've watched that show with subtitles, and it's a brilliant show, and it's like fairly adult, not as adult as Go Line, but similar in tone and style. And Brave Raideen is a fantastic show. And the other one I haven't seen, I forget the name of the other guy.
Vanguard Ace.
Yeah, I haven't seen that show because I don't know if there's any subtitles available for it or even to find it anywhere.
That aired in the US as part of an anthology series called Force 5. So they did translate 26 episodes into English. I don't know how good the dub was.
I only watched the original
Japanese. Yeah, this was very cool, though. I mean, being into the toys at this time, this being the only mythology, of course, there were no cartoons. It was great, and a lot of these licensed books were set in the Marvel Universe at that time, so you could see them interact with, as you can see there, the Fantastic Four. So it was pretty cool.
Yeah,
and of course, I love monsters, and they created a bunch of original monsters for these robots to fight,
as well as
the series.
For a brief period of time, from like if we go 79 and skip ahead to mid 80s when we had Transformers. I mean, some of these licenses began and end, but for a brief period of time, these super robots, Godzilla, Transformers, Prime, Megatron, Fantastic Four, X-Men, were all in the same universe. It's like for a very brief period of time, but they don't officially appear in all those books, but they were part of that same universe for a very short period of time, which just kind of boggles my mind to look back at it.
Yeah. And unfortunately, these characters received a very ignoble end after the cancellation of the series. They randomly showed up in one issue of the Fantastic Four, and without the robots. This is after Marvel lost the license. So just the human pilots they created for the series showed up in Fantastic Four and explained that there was the final battle between the forces of light and darkness, and all the robots were destroyed. So that was a bit of a downer.
That is a downer. It reminds me of another kind of thing that's kind of a Marvel Comics license thing. When they do these ones where it appears in the Marvel Universe, but then the license goes away, sometimes we get leftovers, because in Transformers, they had a character called Circuit Breaker, which eventually went into the Marvel Universe after Transformers was gone. And in ROM Space Knight, ROM went away, but they had the, what was it? The Dire Wraith alien things became part of the universe. And so it's weird. Stuff created for the license book was in there, but that was a Marvel thing because it wasn't part of the property. It was original creation and then stayed in the Marvel Universe, but the license went away. So there's a few little remnants and relics like that.
There is one original character that crossed over between Godzilla and Shogun Warriors, and that was a villain named Dr. Demonicus. He first appeared in Godzilla. He was a monster maker. First appeared in Godzilla. Then he appeared in Shogun Warriors. And then he appeared maybe in a couple of issues of Avengers or Iron Man later on. So he's sort of kind of running around the background in the Marvel Universe as one of those Z-list villains that people bring up every once in a while.
I like the covers on these books quite a bit, but you can tell in the pages that the American artists are not used to drawing Japanese robots because they're always sleek and sexy and angular in anime. And American robots are always like kind of clunky and lumbering and slow. But the Fantastic Four look great, so you can tell they're used to drawing them.
Yeah, so I think Herb Trimpe was using the actual toys as reference rather than the original anime.
That's what makes it a bit more funny looking. Because in the 70s anime, which is probably Marvel Comics was great in the 70s, but also over in Japan, like Marvel and super 70s robots, I just call them for sure. And the anime stuff, there was so much amazing shows in that time that just kicked the ass a lot of the stuff that came after it. Just fantastic, like production quality and stories and that, and just amazing shows.
Yeah,
and so many of them. It's like there's probably more than 50 different bloody robot shows in that era.
Of course, this was published before anime became widespread in America. It was just starting to peek through with Battle of the Planets and Star Blazers and shows like that.
Yeah, it was that time you had those, your old dodgy dubs of various shows, and they had stuff in Italy and that, and not till probably like middle 80s of more OAVs and Akira.
Yeah, the VHS market really opened up.
Stuff like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I love my 70s anime as far as robots, and Transformers is what actually eventually led me to that, because I watched everything Transformers. I mean, everything, like every bloody show in existence. And I read all the Transformers comics twice, which is several hundred comics. And then I'm like, what other robot stuff is there? And there's Brave Yusha from the 90s that Takara Tomy did with Sunrise. It's around 1992. And it basically follows on from Transformers, not in story, but in the kind of style and the toys and the robots. It's very Transformers-y and great fun. And then I watched a bunch of them. And I went, what else is there? Like, well, back in the 70s, you got bloody Combat LaVie, and then you got your pilot mechas, and then you've got your kind of war stories like Gundam and that. And some of those animes are just absolutely fantastic shows.
Yeah. And of course, we see the original Megatron there.
Yep. Oh, yep. Megatron. It always makes me laugh when I see it's called Megatron, but it's like, I don't know, it's like in wrestling. There's been half a dozen people called Rocky or rock this and rock that, and it's just one of those subtitle things that gets added onto things. And so the name Megatron been used a lot. I mean, the word Superman had been used a lot before we ever had a Superman as a generic description of things in science fiction stories and that. And yeah, the original Megatron. Stay away from him. He'll crush you good. Speaking of crushing it, Barbie was crushing it in some of these Marvel comics. This is one of the odd picks. I just went, no, I've got to put this in there because it's just like kind of showing the depth and breadth of all these licenses that they have. And it's kind of an outlier too, because Marvel had a lot of Hasbro stuff in the 80s. This is going into early 90s here, or early to mid 90s. But Barbie's Mattel, of course, so it's kind of unusual because Hasbro had your Transformers, your G.I. Joe, all the, Visionaries and all those cartoon comic tie-ins and all that, and toy lines. So it's kind of weird to see like a Mattel brand in a Marvel comic. And they're not bad comics. I read a couple of these in the last few weeks, and they're pretty mind-numbingly boring to me.
Better you than me.
They were fairly age-appropriate, and I would call them bland and inoffensive. So there's nothing that's kind of upset anybody in these comics.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of stuff about careers and fashion shows, as you would expect, like the toy line. And they seem like decent all-ages comics. But I don't know. I don't know if there's kids who read these and went, no, these are terrible. But, we got 63 issues of Barbie, and we got 53 issues of Barbie fashion. So, they'd kind of follow on. And, well, they're going at the same, overlapped. So there's popular enough to get two titles going at the same time for Barbie.
I didn't even know this existed.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I knew it existed, but I didn't know to that ran for bloody 63. I thought, oh, maybe a mini series, like 4 issues, 6 issues as they do. But no, it ran for several years, and it's like one of their longer running licensed comics, which got my attention. So I did have a look at the art and stories and that. They're fairly average, but it's that you'd call them workmanlike, as far as if you're. I kind of feel sorry for the buggers that would have been working on these books, because no one's putting their hand up going, yeah, I want to do the Barbie book.
Yeah. I think there were other things going on in comics at the time that may have overshadowed this, like Image and the death of Superman and Nightfall and the Clone
you had
Saga.
all those bloody spiraled up Image guys and comics and stuff, and I don't know, heading up into Vertigo at DC and all kinds of Sandman, and it's like, but then Barbie was going strong. But it kind of shows also, I mean, comic books sales wise since World War II have always been on a downward angle. There's never recovered to those numbers, and where you had kids and adults reading stuff, and they've gone down, down, and into the 90s you had that brief speculator bubble. So there was a lot more stuff and there was more licensed stuff and more people buying number ones of anything and everything. But then it kind of died even worse again coming out of that. And post 2000, we've never seen this kind of width and amount of stuff coming out at the same time as their main comics again. So now it's, stuff went off to Dark Horse, went off to IDW for dedicated licensing things. So the comics industry was starting to be a little bit healthy, that they could still publish 2 bloody Barbie books a month as well as Spider-Man. And
here we are.
It's the good stuff.
Love this series. Love the toys. Of course, this was pre-deregulation, no cartoon for the Micronauts, so this was the mythology for everyone in America. Of course, it came from Microman in Japan. I'm not sure if Microman had a dedicated mythology.
They have generic stuff. If you look up, I've only seen on some of those hardcore Transformer sites that really, they're the nerds of nerds of nerds. No offense to anyone. I'm saying this is like niche of a niche of a niche, getting into the history of that stuff. It's really brief and simple. When you read the back of a package and it's like, there's a war in space and people are happening and blah, 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 the attack of the evil insectrons or some shit like that. There's basic stuff like that if you add them all up over a decade or whatever, there's little bits. But basically it's like reading the back of a package and there's a little blurb or thing and there's little manga pages here and there. The weirdest thing is seeing some of the early, when it gets into the Diaclone line, some of the manga pages that have pre-Transformers as the robots before they became Transformers, but in the manga comic pages, that's like really head trippy to see those. So you had stuff like that, and you had stuff like that also for like Microman and that, just little odd manga pages, little commercials, and if you tie it all together, little threads, they're just little snippets, kind of hinting at stories in a universe, but not a continuity, not a universe like this.
Yeah. I know they kept the basic premise of when the Micronauts and the Microman came to our world, they were the size of action figures. So
yeah, that's cool.
Basic premise held up across the whole thing. Micronauts, oh man, so such a great, rich mythology built by Bill Mantlo, and just started getting republished recently in omnibus format because Micronauts has been owned by Hasbro for many years. And the Micronauts comic is a amalgam of the toy ideas and Marvel's original ideas mashed together. So that was kind of preventing it from being reprinted all these years. And plus all the Marvel guest stars, because like Shogun Warriors, this took place within the Marvel universe. Micronauts crossed over with Fantastic Four, X-Men, Nick Fury and S.H.I.E.L.D., Man-Thing, all kinds of Marvel characters showed up in this series. So it is nice to finally get, which I have here, the reprint in beautiful omnibus format. So hopefully this is the first of several volumes. I think they're going to need about 3 volumes to reprint everything. At least 3.
That's awesome. And I was excited. Like I remember earlier in the year when you're hearing about these or going ahead and ordering them that, and I was like, yes, Goji's finally got it.
Yeah.
It's a long time coming.
Yeah, it's this and also another one, Rom Space Knight, which is also currently owned by Hasbro, and both series written by Bill Mantlo.
Hasbro are terrible at sitting on any licensed thing that they're not actively doing anything with for 10 or 20 years, and they just sit on it and do nothing with it.
Yeah.
But it stops anyone else doing anything with it.
They're like Smaug, just sitting on a pile of gold.
Yeah, exactly. Although
and
that's probably insulting to Smaug.
Mask and visionaries.
I think some of the corporates at Hasbro might be just 5% more evil.
Perhaps.
But not as cool. They're not as cool as a big dragon.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's excellent that they finally were able to untangle that legal web and do some reprints of these.
And you can still see a lot of this stuff bleeding into even the MCU, because the Micronauts come from the Microverse, which is ostensibly the quantum realm that they use in the Ant-Man films.
And some of those 70s Hulk comics, sometimes he was getting shrunk down to tiny sizes and disappear. Is that meant to be the same Microverse, or is it different?
I think they kind of there's different layers of the Microverse as you shrink down. So I think they kind of, it's like the future and time travel stories they do. They eventually mash it up into one continuity.
Right.
So that's kind of what happened with Jarella's world and the Micronauts. They kind of mashed it together into saying it's all part of the same quantum realm. Different.
Some of those 70s Hulk ones, he runs into that whole race of green skin people.
Right. Yeah,
they're fun books.
This was an awesome book, and I don't know if you know the story of Bill Mantlo, the writer. He worked on
again. Is that he became like the lawyer in that?
Right. He wrote for Marvel for a while. Micronauts ROM. He did a run on the Incredible Hulk. In the early 90s, he was out rollerblading, as you did back in the 90s. He was struck by a car, hit and run. They never found the driver. He suffered serious head trauma, which led to permanent brain damage. And he's been in an assisted facility all these years. Of course, being a comic book writer, he didn't have any medical coverage or anything like that. So for years, he was in like a government subsidized facility. But Bill Mantlo also co-created Rocket Raccoon. So when the Guardians first came up as a movie, his story started circulating again. And then a bunch of fans went online and started saying, "Hey, Marvel, what about Bill Mantlo? Are you taking care of Bill Mantlo?" And eventually Bill's brother, who has been his caretaker all these years, came out and said, "Marvel has taken care of Bill. They've been very generous. We've been able to move him into a private facility, so his quality of life is better." So, it's a tragic story, but at least Marvel did the right thing at the end. I don't know if they were being altruistic or if it's because of fan pressure. I think it's the latter. But at least he's getting some benefit out of his creations at this point in his life. But it's just a shame, because he was such a talented writer. Between ROM and Micronauts and Hulk, he created so many great memories and comics. And, sometimes life is not fair.
No, it's a horrible bloody accident that happened. I was reading something the other week. It was like a trade paperback of, I couldn't tell you what, because I read so many bloody comics and stuff last few weeks for various things. But it was one of those long 2-page introductions to a new edition of a trade of some old material. But it had, and I can't remember who wrote it there either, but it had someone who worked with Bill Mantlo in the 70s and knew him and called him a friend, and it told that same story in detail and said, it's horrible what happened, yada yada, and but saying, the worst thing is that, he's still alive, but he lost a friend. He lost a friend that, he used to work with and know and see all the time, and bullpen and that. And
yeah. Not to be a downer, but I just like to call attention to the man when I can, because he was so talented.
And when it says he went to be a lawyer, to say he was like
right, he left comics and he was studying to become an attorney at the time.
Yeah, it's like what a bloody horrible thing that happened. Oh yeah, we'll move on to the next one. What have we got? Elf. Elf was a bit of fun, popular show in the 80s, of course, with the puppet. And he had that. Remember the plush toy that was everywhere. I got that for Christmas as a kid. And my brother liked it so much he got one like not long after as well. So there were 2 of them in the house. I used to love the show as a kid. I don't know. It's not easy to watch now. It's kind of like really watching now. It's like it's a bit kitsch. It's a bit broad. Some of the comedy.
every generation has its wacky aliens on Earth sitcom. It was Mork and Mindy in the 70s, Alf in the 80s, then Third Rock from the Sun. There always seems to be one for each generation.
There's always something. And there's always some kind of weird show or something. Well, this one has to make something different where everyone's human, but one character's a puppet. but we don't acknowledge he's a puppet. It's just, and I'm not too happy about his whole thing of trying to eat cats either, because I always had cats and dogs, and I'm not really a fan of that part of it.
Hi, Pedro.
I did have a few issues of Alf as a kid, and this would be the first Marvel comic where I actually got several issues in a row before any superhero stuff. I would have been, I don't know, probably between 8 and 10 years old. The newsagent used to have this, and my granddad would walk down there and he'd buy me an issue when we're there. So he kind of got me started on comics, American comics as opposed to Tintin and Asterix. I used to read in the school libraries for years and years before I saw this. But there's probably some of the first Marvel comics I ever owned at home and got to reread was Alf. And it was a fun book, and I probably read it for about 6 or 12 months. And then Archie Ninja Turtles started coming out, and then I got onto that book, and I was reading that book for 2 or 3 years until the newsagent just stopped selling the bloody thing, which wasn't their fault. The distributor just stuffed them and they couldn't get it, so couldn't get the book no more. But yeah, I had them quite a number of years. I don't know what happened to them because I've got other stuff from back then, and I know a heap of things have disappeared over the years. I've moved like no less than 20 times over the years. It was a fun book. I really liked the covers. The covers were great. There's a lot of humor. It ran for about 50 issues, so it was relatively successful. And the covers had some really fun gags. Like the first issue is just like Alf, that's Alf the puppet from the show there in a still shot, and he's just going, Robert Redford, like he's just like so in love with himself, or talking himself up. And then when the book got cancelled, they just used the same cover again for issue 50. And I think they just changed the thing, but they had to use that same image again. There was 2 or 3 issues that referenced the X-Men. Here he's going to the Professor Charles Xylophone School for Gifted Malmutants, and the bad guy was Magneto. It was instead of powers of magnetism, it had powers to attract meat, like cooked meat, like chicken drumsticks and stuff. And here on the cover, they're kicking him out, and he says, I'm going to start my own school and call it Alpha Flight. And I thought that was a fun little pun, like Alpha Flight. And then issue 49, he's saying to the Grim Reapers come, because obviously they've announced the book's going to be cancelled, and he's going, you've come 1 issue early, come back next month. And that's true. Issue 50 was the last, the book was cancelled. But yeah, the stories are pretty, like, I don't know, bland and generic in that kind of Saturday morning cartoon way. But when you're a kid, it was a good, fun reading book, and there were some good gags and fun stuff in it, and I really enjoyed it. Yeah, even up in the corner there, he's like, this is a corner box, not a coroner box. Always had silly puns and stuff. But yeah, I love that number 22 cover where it's obviously meant to be Colossus, but he's got slightly furry looking Colossus. Very fun book, and it was cool. Like, I would probably, if they did some trades of this, I wouldn't want the whole series, but I'd probably have one out of nostalgia. I'd have one on the shelf, just, but I wouldn't want the whole series. Unlike this series, where you would want to get the was it Omnibus have done on this one? What kind of edition have they done there?
So the Omnibus of this is finally coming out this year in October, because November 3rd is Godzilla's 70th anniversary.
Do you think they held it off because of that?
Probably. I mean, the last time they reprinted it was in one of those. Yeah, the last time they reprinted it was in one of those essential volumes. Yeah, it was quite a while ago.
Yeah.
So they may have been holding off for the anniversary, or Marvel might just be in the mood to make deals this year with Micronauts and ROM, and now Godzilla. So yeah, I'll definitely be picking up this omnibus.
Seeing these,
I don't know what Bjorn's doing in the corner there. I'm kind of worried about that.
I don't know either. He sneaks into weird places. Sometimes he sneaks into Boba Joe shows here and there. Little tigers and things get into the thumbnails. I don't know how they get in there.
So Herb Trimpe also drew this, as well as Shogun Warriors. I think this came out first, and then he did Shogun Warriors.
Now this is a big green series thing, and it looks a lot nicer than the robots. That's what I know.
Yeah. Yep. And again, this took place in the Marvel Universe. So It's interesting how they did it. Godzilla first appears in Alaska, so you have to assume that he left Japan, swam across the Pacific, came up in Alaska, then he made his way down the West Coast, just completely bypassed Canada. Then he next showed up in Seattle, Washington, and then San Francisco, and then made his way cross country to New York City. And of course, being Marvel in the 70s, the Avengers and the Fantastic Four don't notice what's going on until he gets to New York. They're completely oblivious to the entire thing. It's S.H.I.E.L.D.'s problem for the entire run of the series until they get it up to issue like 22.
Yeah, that's hilarious. I have read a couple of random issues of this as research a few months back, and I remember seeing that, and it's like, what's going on? It's like West Coast Avengers, regular Avengers, X-Men, like no one's paying attention. They're sleeping on the job.
In San Francisco, he met the champions. You know,
that's like Iceman, Angel. Who else is in that? Like Ghost Rider?
It was well, Ghost Rider wasn't in that issue. It was Black Widow. What the hell she's going to do? Hercules, Angel, and Iceman.
Such a random group. I remember champions.
So there is a scene where Godzilla tried to step on Hercules, and Hercules managed to topple him.
Does he do this? Does he?
So that was
like Hulk
exactly.
Stuff. That would be his move.
So that was the big Hercules moment. But yeah, fun series. A lot of original monsters created for it because, of course, when you license Godzilla from Toho, you only get Godzilla. You don't get Mothra or Rodan or King Ghidorah.
Yeah.
So if you don't want to pay all those licensing fees, you get Godzilla and just make up a bunch of monsters, which is exactly what they did.
And that's kind of like the style of anything monster related as well. If you don't have, just make up more monsters.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and there's some fun stories in this. He's in Colorado. He encounters some ranchers, and they try to wrangle him or something, and then he ends up in Las Vegas. It's all just these, wacky 1970s Marvel stories. What else are you going to do with a giant lizard?
Yeah. Can I ask also, because I'm not familiar with the chronology and timeline, was this before or after or at the same time as that bloody, was it Hanna-Barbera who did the animated show?
Yeah, around the same time.
Right.
And they were completely unrelated.
Yeah, unrelated. But do you think there was any tying in of the kind of popularity, or was it just that Toho was?
Oh yeah, exactly. It was all the creature features from the 1970s were showing the old Toho films at the time.
Yeah,
and Godzilla's popularity was really being raised in the U.S. at that time. So you had this and the Hanna-Barbera series. You had the Mattel toys, the Shogun Warrior toys.
There we go. Yeah, I know the
Godzilla's gang. So yeah, this was like the first golden age of Godzilla in the U.S. And the second age would come in the 1990s with Trendmasters.
Yeah, because I wasn't familiar with that animated show, and I watched some clips last year, and I didn't know it existed till last year because I certainly never saw it as a kid on reruns or anything.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the animated show basically couldn't do anything Godzilla-like because there were so many rules in place on Saturday morning cartoons. He couldn't fight the military. He couldn't actually punch monsters. He couldn't kill anything.
Punch a monster.
There was no radioactive breath, so they kind of turned him into a big superhero.
He couldn't steal babies or fight communists or nothing. He was all tied up.
Absolutely nothing.
It just makes me want to watch that show even more.
I do like at the start of the series, though, S.H.I.E.L.D. is the first one to respawn in Alaska. And Nick Fury's there, and Nick Fury basically just hands off the problem to Dum Dum Dugan and leaves the series. So throughout the entire run of this series, it's basically Dum Dum Dugan in the S.H.I.E.L.D. helicarrier chasing Godzilla like Ahab chasing Moby Dick across the entire series. And they can never manage to stop him.
I do kind of like their... it seems like very irresponsible of Nick Fury, but also to put in context, like in the Marvel universe, it's like, look, we've been to outer space, we've traveled in time, we've fought doppelgangers, we've fought bloody Doctor Doom. It's just a giant lizard. Don't worry about it. We'll sort it out next week. It's like it's very ordinary.
And they did try everything. They used PIM particles on him at one point.
Yeah,
shrunk him down, and then he got so small that they lost him. Then, as he was growing larger, they lured him onto Dr. Doom's time machine, sent him through time, where he met Devil Dinosaur, but of course he came back.
Oh.
and grew to his original size in the middle of New York City. So that was a very,
I'm
very
guessing he
bad
didn't
plan.
meet the Hulk at any point.
He didn't, unfortunately, no.
That would have been a shame.
Or
It would have been
Spider-Man.
really. It would have been cool if they both got shrunk down and went into like the microverse and fought each other there or something. So no one even saw it, but it happened there.
Mm. Yeah, the big final battle was cool though. It was Avengers and Fantastic Four and Shield trying to stop him in New York City. And there's this ridiculous scene where Godzilla's trying to topple the Empire State Building, and Thor gets on the other side of the building and swings his hammer and pushes against Godzilla on the other side of the building to try to hold it up. Now, of course, real life physics, the building would have crumbled. Right. But in the Marvel Universe physics, it worked, and Thor was able to hold the building up.
The chain pulling a planet.
Right, exactly. Physics have no place in the Marvel Universe.
No. Yeah, I'll probably go back to read some naughty versions of these later in the year. So I do want to read some more of them just out of curiosity, just because I love monsters and robots and stuff, and it's fun seeing the old crossovers.
Yeah, it's a fun series. Ridiculous but fun, just like a lot of stuff back then.
Yeah, like a lot of licensed stuff. That's kind of half the fun of it. Marvel did a really good long-running several series of Conan. We got Conan the Barbarian, which had 275 issues. Savage Sword of Conan, 235. And they got King Conan, which is about 19 issues or so. And they're kind of just running continuously, really, like from 70 through to 83, which is pretty impressive for a licensed thing. I mean, there's a lot of Conan Marvel stories. There's a lot of non-Conan stories too, of course. The original material, but there's a lot of public domain stories like Sherlock Holmes and that. If you look up anything Conan, there's just masses of stories for decades. So he's remained quite popular. And the Marvel books are pretty good. I've got one of those essential black and white ones. It's got that top left one where it's Conan Barbarian #1. I've got about the first 20 issues of that. It's in that book. And I found it on the street for free. So that's the best price possible.
Nice.
On the curbside collection day, someone threw out a whole pile of comic trades and they were all perfect condition, and they're still sitting on the floor next to me, so I'm slowly reading them. But they also had the kind of like sister book, the Eclipse Savage Sword of Conan. Again, had like the more mature like theme stuff and outside of the comics code, which can be a bit more true to the actual Conan stories, because in the main Marvel book they had to make it more, PG or whatever. There's still kind of mature themes in there, but it's never explicit. You're not going to see big decapitations or naked breasts or nothing like that, not blood in it. But it's still relatively violent and great art and fairly consistent, decent, fun stories it's really varied issue to issue what happens in each one. But the good fun reading.
I would argue that the Schwarzenegger films were as popular as they were because of the comic book and not because of the original stories from Conan Doyle.
Yeah. Like, I mean, this Marvel one's really popularized the character for a good decade through the 70s.
Yeah, good adventure tales, good, pulp adventure.
And they had not related to this, but in the 90s they had that Conan animated series too, and that was quite fun. And had all like the Serpent Men and stuff in that one.
And of course, Marvel recently got I think they lost it again, but in recent years they got the Conan license back, and they stuck him on an Avengers team.
What?
Yeah.
That's like in DC, they had the Frankenstein's monster, and he became part of one of the various DC teams and that, but it's a different version, their own version of him and that.
Yeah, and these stories also were reprinted in I don't think they were essential volumes. I think at the time that Dark Horse was republishing Marvel's material because
I get confused when that sort of stuff happens. Now it's the other way around. Now Marvel's republishing Dark Horse stuff from like early comics and stuff. Yeah,
the material follows the license, but they did those in those essential type black and white, big phone book size paperbacks, and it still looked pretty good.
Yeah, it looked decent. Yeah, there's a lot of great artwork and covers and all that, and
And of course, they had Red
X-
Sonja that spun off from this, and
yeah, Red Sonja, and then she went
Marvel
on to
also
like,
had Solomon Kane as well, which is
yeah.
another Conan Doyle creation.
I watched the movie of that a few years back. That was surprisingly enjoyable.
Mm-hmm.
I kept meaning to buy that on Blu-ray. Actually, I want that Solomon Kane and John Carter of Mars. Like, I enjoy. They were both fairly B movies, but I enjoy them for what they were. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I'll go on to the next one. Click the magic button. We got Planet of the Apes.
Ape will not kill ape. I'm always surprised that the Planet of the Apes is such a long-running franchise. It's had so many films, a television show, an animated series, all the comics, all the toys, and it still doesn't seem to be up to the level of popularity as something like Star Trek or Doctor Who, even though it's been around for so long.
I only got to see the movies all the way through the first time probably about 10 years ago. They released a Blu-ray set. There was like, was it 5 movies like the original ones? It had all in the one nice combo set. So I'd only seen the first one before, like on TV or whatever. And all the other ones were like, unless you catch a repeat on a weekend or something, or the network can afford to even play them as far as licensing, I couldn't see them because they weren't around on VHS rental or anything when I was a kid. They just weren't there except for the original one. Mm-hmm. So when I got that Blu-ray set, man, that was a great weekend. I watched like all 5 of those one weekend.
Yeah. They had to get a little bit creative in the original film series since they blew up the Earth in the first sequel.
like the first film for me is always the best, but I genuinely loved all 5 of them. Like I'll watch them any day.
Mm-hmm. I haven't seen the newest one yet. I'll catch that when it comes to streaming.
Yeah, I haven't. I think I watched the first, maybe the second, or that was it. James Franco was in the first one, or one of those most recent remakes and all that.
Right.
And it just didn't do it for me. I just went, nah, I'm just not into this. I didn't watch any more of them.
Don't want that CGI. You want those old rubber masks back.
I do. I wish they'd just get people in suits.
Where's Roddy McDowell when you need him?
Just get some Doctor Who sort of effects going, and then I'll probably actually watch them. It just really it really takes me out of it watching those CG. I mean, they've done fantastic work as far as the mocap, and I don't know. I assume it's Andy Serkis or somebody in there because every time there's an ape or a golem, it's always somebody doing the acting.
Yeah, it's Andy Serkis.
But fantastic work as far as the quality of making them. That all the animation, no issue with that. But I'm just not into it. It just takes me out of the film. Yeah. Mm-hmm. I can happily watch a CG Hulk any day, but I don't really want to watch CG Ape. Probably because I've never seen a Hulk, but I've seen monkeys in real life, and I know that that's just a bit of Silicon Valley thing going on.
Yeah. Yeah, but as far as the original comics, I didn't read many of them, but they were still, like Conan, good pulp adventure stories. It's not a whole lot you can do with the premise. It's just the
it's
you characters and elements
corner trying to do new stories because you've already got those movies, and like, where do you go? It's hard. I mean, you kind of got to break down, do the old events that happen in between other events thing that they did in, like, I don't know, Transformers and stuff like that. Where do you go as a writer to try and make new stories and have them make sense without completely contradicting all the films that already contradict each other?
Yeah. And I'm not sure if it was Dark Horse or IDW that had the license, but they did a bunch of crossovers.
Yeah.
Recently, Boba Hicks sent me a trade paperback. It was
I read one last week.
Yeah, Planet of the Apes, Star Trek, the Primate Directive.
Yes, I read King Kong Planet Apes last week, and it was actually reasonable. I thought it was going to be terrible, but I found it was an enjoyable read.
Yep. Yeah, Apes are still going after all these years.
Yeah, and it's funny. I'd never think of it as a crossover. I'm like, like Apes and giant gorilla or whatever. Like, it makes sense. They just like one of the Kong species. I'm not sure I think it might have been a female, ends up dying on their edge of their forbidden zone, basically next to the Statue of Liberty, and they find this big corpse, and they're like, "This is like a god to us. We need to go and find out where it came from." And they set out on a boat and travel across the ocean and end up on the Kong Island, and they're like meets one of the last Kong there. It's kind of like similar to that Skull Island that had John C. Reilly, where it's like the last Kong of a family or whatever, and of this like dynasty of these apes. And then they're like, this is like a god to us, but then they're like, oh, we're going to capture it and take it home. It's going to solve all our problems. I'm like, no, it's not. It's going to create more problems. You should know these things.
Yeah, they did something similar in the recent JLA Godzilla Kong crossover.
I haven't read that yet. I might read that next week.
Where the Legion of Doom wound up on Skull Island, and Grodd saw Kong and just looked up and said, God?
He's just like, how can I mind control that guy? Do my bidding. But yeah, I love these covers too. They did fantastic covers on this series.
Yeah, a lot of these 70s magazines had really beautiful painted covers. Not like you see today.
Like the whole run of these, they've really nice covers. I was looking at them the other day, and like one of those sites where you can look at like just the covers of all the whole series and that. They're really beautiful.
I mean, these days there's a lot of digital artwork being done, but back then it was all hand painted.
Yeah. Yeah, cool books. Like, and I've never been much of a Planet of the Apes person. Like, I didn't see it as a kid, and I didn't see the first movie till I was at least a teenager. Never saw any of the toys because I mean I was born in 1980 and there were 70s toys, but New Zealand, not a lot of secondhand toys around. There's just like Perth, really. It's not a lot of the previous decade stuff was around, or if it is, it's in the hands of like the few people that have it. They're not going to be letting go of it. So it was kind of foreign stuff to me, but it's something I've come to enjoy a lot more, and I happily will go back and rewatching the original films again. And like this is something, if they did some nice additions, I'd probably actually consider picking up some of these if they did some modern reprints. It's just got that great pulp feel to it, you know, kind of real classic.
Right.
Now, next pick I got in here is 2001: A Space Odyssey, and I kind of went like the Barbie. This is just like what's going on? Why is there a Marvel comic of bloody 2001? Right. It's quite strange. And if you read, I haven't read all this through because I think it was like 10 or 12. Was it 10? Yeah, around 10 issues. The artworks, it's Jack Kirby, so the artwork's fantastic, of course. But it's got all the strange Kirby stuff. There's like bloody cavemen doing thing type poses, or Thing or Hulk like postures and movements, and you've got monsters and you've got space stuff, and you've got the Kirby dots and stuff going on like Silver Surfer. There's a lot of stuff going on in this book. I don't know the story's that great, but it's certainly interesting visually to have a look through it.
Yeah,
and kind of unpack what's in there.
Kirby had a fascination with cosmic things and the theories of ancient aliens, and that was really coming through in his work in the 70s. First with the New Gods, and then the Eternals, and he also did this. So it all kind of was in his wheelhouse at the time.
Yeah. I mean, I like stuff about ancient civilizations or where did things come from and all this. Like it's fun story material. But I put this in for pretty obvious reason because a big purple man on the screen there, Machine Man, like he debuted in this comic book as another Kirby thing, and he's I guess you call him an android because he's not just a robot. He's like an imitation human being. I don't know, like your Bishop and Aliens and all that. He's an android, so he's simulating a human being, but he went on to be part of the regular Marvel universe. He also had some fun stories on some of the Marvel's zombies stuff where the zombies are trying to bite him. He's like, I'm a machine, you idiots. Shoot them with guns. But I really love the Machine Man character. He's just such a cool design. And I love the purple. I love the action figure, which you and I both have from the old Legends series, where he has the stretchy, bendy arms. A really, really cool gimmick. But he's such a unique looking visual. And I do like the story. He's this... starts as a kind of generic robot android, but becomes more of a developed personality. And he's like other androids in science fiction. He's like a learning machine that can become more intelligent, becomes more human with like emotions and that. He's just a really cool character. The
old trope of the android trying to become more human, like the Vision or Data or any of them.
Well, it reminds me even of characters like Jim Starlin's Warlock or Adam Strange, who was an artificial being who slowly learns more about humans and culture and how to be a being in this world and all that, because they're just strange oddities that don't really fit in. And he's not a character you really hear about much as far as Marvel goes. He's kind of gets forgotten about. But I just think he's really cool. I love robots and androids.
He was eventually spun off into his own brief series. Kirby did the first half of the series, and then it was taken over by Steve Ditko. So he's got a pretty good pedigree.
So this is another one where you could, if you did a trade, you could have the short series and then include the issues that had him in this and that trade. That that would make.
They did that. It's out of print now, though, and it's
everything's out of print that I want to get.
Machine Man: The Complete Collection. I think it's probably going for double its cover price right now.
Yeah. I can't believe stuff as recent as like 10 years ago, as far as reprints. I mean, because I've seen stuff reprinted 80s, 90s, 2000, 2010. As recent as 10 years ago, some of it's out and it's gone. You can't get it, and it's like double the price on eBay. I'm like, no, it didn't used to be that bad, man. It used to be,
especially with obscure characters. Because Marvel does a lot of collections for obscure characters. They've done one for Tigra and Man-Wolf, but as soon as they're published, they go out of print very quickly.
Yeah, it's like, I guess it must be a shorter run too, compared to like a Spider-Man or a Hulk trade and that.
And eventually he found love with Jocasta, the Bride of Ultron, another artificial being.
Where does that happen?
Probably in one of the Avengers series, either the main title or Avengers West Coast, because he never had his own series again. Except for there's one miniseries that was done in the 80s with art by Barry Windsor Smith. It was a 4-issue miniseries that sort of reinvented Machine Man. Yeah. And that's the only other time he's had his own series. Other than that, he's a guest star in Next Wave or Marvel Zombies or something like that.
Yeah, there's a lot of cool characters in Marvel that they're in a series and they're not. I mean, you've got your kind of A characters, your Hulk, Cat, Spider-Man, and whatnot, and then you got your kind of B ones like your Blade and Ghost Rider, who have a series and then it gets cancelled. Have a series, they're cancelled, and then you've got your kind of C. And I'm not saying in quality they're a C, but in terms of sales or number of books, you've got all sorts of ones like Jim Starlin's Warlock and Machine Man that are really interesting characters, and in some ways they're more interesting than bloody, I don't know, Blade or Ghost Rider, the characters I really love, but they're more intellectually interesting if you get into their stories. There's more depth to some of the things, and they tackle some of the complexities of human issues and problems and just stuff you don't always see in comics these days. It's just like, bang, pow. It's like it's all over. So it's a shame some of the side characters in Marvel get kind of sidelined by the popularity of the bigger icons and get kind of forgotten about. And
they can't carry their own series. Sometimes you get lucky and they find success on a team.
Yeah, I was going to say that's
like the new Guardians of the Galaxy is an example of that.
Like you got, I don't know, all your kind of oddity teams, like your bloody, well, Champions not the best example, but Defenders, like Defenders and Secret Defenders. Who else? Like you had New Warriors in the 90s, and then they had the bloody who were the evil ones? Not Squadron Supreme, because that was
Thunderbolts.
Thank you, Thunderbolts, the original version, because they've done several versions now, but it was like bad cover version, just using the name. But the original Thunderbolts was a clever, cool gimmick. But yeah, stuff like that where you get these other characters as a team or a side thing. And I even like a cool obscure character I like turning up on a team. Actually, I saw they were doing from a Warlock and the Infinity Watch, there's like a Drax in his proper 70s look, and Moondragon like 2-pack figure coming out this year. It looks really nice. I was like, finally, the real Drax, not the one that's in the movies, which I don't mind him, but because it's Batista from the wrestling, I don't mind him. I've got best of Batista DVDs and that, but I'm just like, man, I want to see the real Drax.
That's on my list to pick up this year. See as soon as the price drops.
So next up, G.I. Joe, a real Gojitron hero.
The first comic book to be advertised on television.
Yeah, and they use that formula again with the Transformers. They're literally like, we did this over here, let's do it again. Same formula.
And then deregulation happened, and they were like, oh, we can make a whole series.
Yep, Ronnie's America.
This was a big deal at the time. And again, here's my old friend Herb Trimpe, who did the first first part of the G.I. Joe series with that dynamic cover of Joe's leaping in front of a tank, which is probably not a great idea, especially those guys standing on the treads.
Rolling.
Those are dangerous positions. OSHA would not look kindly upon that.
Yeah, that's the old I don't know, X-Men or whoever, or the old team book trope of everyone's leaping at something that's just off camera, but like you wouldn't actually be doing that real life. It's dangerous.
And they're all deaf now because of that that gun barrel going off.
Yeah, that's going off. Sound battle strategy, and then all the Joes accidentally kill themselves that day. But yeah, this is a fantastic book, which I've admittedly not read because I wasn't a G.I. Joe fan as a kid. I don't know what happened in New Zealand, but the cartoon was not on reprints through the late 80s, whereas He-Man and Transformers ran from the original run whenever they're on, like the first air date. They were just in reruns for like 10, 15 years. It was virtually never a time they went on the air because I watched them so many times over and over. And I thought back and I thought, why wasn't G.I. Obviously they didn't have the license or didn't pay, whatever it was. It didn't run as long as in reruns as Masters and Transformers. So that's why I didn't get to see it, because I would have been too young to see it on its original run, the old cartoon. But this book was more, would you call this an all ages book or not? Like it's more mature than the cartoon, which gets kind of silly at times. Like, it's definitely got more serious stories.
Yeah, I mean, it's as mature as any Marvel superhero book at the time.
Yeah.
I mean, they didn't put it into
like
the
kind
Star
of teenager
Comics category. Yeah. And for a lot of Joe fans, this is their preferred world building rather than
and it had a great run. And this is a book I'm going to come back to. I actually want to get into reading the full run of this, and then they had also a follow-up, but I don't know if people like it or not, but apparently I think it was Image that a continuation where it used the same numbering that ran on from these books as well.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know if those ones are any good or not.
Yeah, I'm
not sure if Larry Hama was involved with those ones or not.
Yeah, he's involved in the one that's going now. I think is it IDW? I can't keep track, or is it Image?
Yeah,
they had Image now. I think they're doing another shared universe with Transformers and G.I. Joe now at Image.
Yeah, that'll go well again. They've done that once and stuffed it up. So what will they do this time?
Like the Transformers license is a very meandering road. The path that G.I. Joe took in comics. Yeah. Several different publishers, from the Devil's Due, IDW.
Yeah, that's right. Devil's Due. I remember seeing that in the old comic shop.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it was confusing because it was Devil's Due, and then it was Dreamwave, and now there's IDW, and it's like, were these all the same companies? Like, there's some different names. Like, no, they were different companies. But some of them were quite, small at the time. There's kind of almost forget it even happened.
And it was the comics that made Snake Eyes the breakout character, the Wolverine group, because he was just another guy in the cartoon.
Yeah, and that's that infamous silent issue, that number 21. Yep. Yeah, of course, the sister title to this over in the UK was the Action Force, which had a mix of like reprints and other stuff. And like your other UK ones, you get a bit of if you're an idiot like me, you'd see a book as like Spider-Man and Zoids. I'm like, oh, this would be awesome. Is he teaming up? Is he going to be riding around or punching the Zoids? No, they're two separate stories. They just tell you on the cover what's in the book. And me as a kid, it was like, oh man, this will be exciting. All these years, I finally got to read it, and I was like, they're not even in the same story. So the same thing here. You get like some Action Force, and then as the books rotated, other serials might be in the back or different things.
Mm-hmm. It's funny how they changed the name to appeal to an international audience, I guess.
Yeah.
But all these years later, there are so many collectors around the world who love G.I. Joe, a real American hero.
Yeah.
People in all countries.
It's so confusing because, I've watched pretty much anything old Tony and Analog Toys has done. So I never knew a damn thing about Action Force as in the original, like Palatoids and all that. And but I've watched all his stuff. So I learned through watching those videos about what the original Action Force was, and then how it went into Joe, and now they had shared molds and designs and stuff that went back and forth in your 12-inch before we ever got to the smaller figures. So it was real confusing seeing And then we get to the 80s, rebranded, shrunken, post-petrol crisis size, real American hero Joes. And then now we're taking them, but we're calling them Action Force, but it's these guys. And it's so confusing. And like when you read the book, like, and then some of the names are different. And it's like in the cartoon, they had Sergeant Slaughter, and over there he was Sergeant Slammer in the UK.
Right.
Very confusing, but good books anyway. Like the Transformers ones, you got UK artists and writers getting to do other bits of new material as well as reprinting the American stuff.
Yeah, I think Sergeant Slaughter's name change was kind of a Mikey's Nunchucks situation over there in the UK.
Anytime something like that happens, I just think it was bloody Thatcher and Video Nasties, like that whole era. Yeah, the legacy of Mikey's Nunchucks will never end. The good thing is, in some of the toys, now we get that grapple hook as well as a nunchuck and a Mikey figure, which is cool. But yeah, it's hilarious that they bloody edited out the nunchucks, and then the Americans making the show got so sick of that nonsense they started just removing them entirely from the original show, so they didn't have to edit or censor them anymore.
Nice covers on these books, though. Even though some of the insides were reprints, they did all have original covers. Yeah,
and you get a lot of covers because it's very misleading when you see like Action Force and Transformers in them in the UK ones, because it'll be like 50 issues or 100 issues, but it's like if it's weekly, you might see 4 covers in a month instead of 1. So you see a lot of covers, but it's still just the same material reprinted and broken up into a shorter format. And a lot of sometimes you get like fold out posters, or what's this one here? Something number 2 presented free. You'd get that they love in the UK like little gimmicks and things. Maybe you'll get, I don't know, some 3D glasses or something, like little, magazine or newspaper type feelies and stuff to give away. And that,
yeah, I've seen some with little folding cardboard, like assembled toys.
That was a very big thing too, because it's kind of like it's reprint comics, but it's that magazine kind of thing. We want extra value and stuff, and But yeah, next pick on here is we've got Transformers, which is the original series, where it's 1 in a 4-issue limited series. It was number 1. Of course, over here we've got issue 80, which was number 80 in a 4-issue limited series. It's slightly confusing there, but a very fun gag, I think. They put that on there because it was a 4-issue miniseries. And then, of course, it was renewed and became an ongoing because it was popular enough and ran for 80 issues. And it was a very decent run of a book. A lot of the stories are not great, admittedly, even by Bill Yancey and other people that worked on it will tell you, they say, no, they weren't great. It's a job. We did it,
Right.
But I think you did a good job. And you get this kind of tangent universe that's different than the animated series. And it's different than Transformers UK. You had 3 continuities going, like your animated, your Transformers US and Transformers UK. Each was a little bit different. And then we did get some fun crossovers here, like G.I. Joe and Transformers, which that first one is not great when you reread it. But some of the later ones they did were better. And also when the license jumped around to different companies, some of the later G.I. Joe Transformers books are really fun. And you get some of those Don Figueroa designs and stuff that end up being made as third-party toys. But it's still really cool just seeing a whole bunch of cool Joe and Transformers in this early book.
It's funny how they almost set this in the Marvel Universe with the appearance of Spider-Man in the 3rd issue, and then they completely forgot about it. It was
at the start, because you had Spider-Man swooping around Megatron, and then after that it changed where it wasn't associated with it anymore.
And they completely forgot about it. Now you have that one issue that can't be reprinted because Spider-Man's in it.
So I think it's pretty much like the original miniseries. You could say that's in the Marvel Universe, and then after that it's not really the Marvel anymore. And that
one thing the series did do is highlight a lot of different characters, especially Decepticon leaders, because you had Bludgeon, Straxus, Jaxus, even Ratbat for a time was the leader of the Decepticons.
Yeah, that was the leader.
Ridiculous, but they made it work.
Yeah, and they also had that Ratbat was in that like car wash of doom. Right.
And the comic also went far past what the cartoon did, so you would be able to see the pretenders and characters like that in the comic where you couldn't see them on the cartoon.
And you got a bit more of the combiners and some of those characters. So it's a really fun book, and it's like, admittedly, some of the stories are not great, but it's one of those things. Like, I don't know, it's like I've got a Friday the 13th box set. Half those movies are fairly garbage, but I can chuck them on a weekend and just sit there and binge them and really enjoy it. I can do the same with this comic. Some of them are really quite a bit better. Some of them are not great, but it's just more Transformers, and I'm like, great, I'll hook it up to my veins. And we also got the Transformers. This is probably one of the best comic titles of all time, because if you look at issue number 1 of 3, it's The Transformers, the movie. Then on issue 2 and 3, they removed that extra the. Someone realized that's a bit too much. But that book was pretty pedestrian, because like a lot of the coloring is really off in it.
Yeah.
But admittedly, some of the animation models weren't finalized. But even by that, characters that were already been in the regular show had weird colors. The Marvel comics, like the Soundwave, was often purple, which was kind of established in the regular Marvel comic. That was just his color due to the printing and the way they did it. But then in the movie version, he was different again. So it still didn't make sense. And Megatron keeps his like kind of football helmet bucket head look, because he was like, that was his different look he kept from those early ad promos. And they also did these really fun Transformers Universe books, which is like your Marvel Universe profile books, where there's typically a page per character and just a whole wall of text going on about, expanding more into the character and the lore and all that.
Yeah, I love that. I love that Transformers Universe series, because it basically took the tech spec bios and expanded them into more detail.
And the double gatefold covers too, like that's the front and back, where it's Megatron versus Prime. They did that on each of the 4 issues. I would love to have a trade of that. Like those been out of print a long time as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, you get the funny early script storyboard stuff of like Magnus, where he's drawn and quartered instead of just like magically exploding in the movie, and other little differences. Wheelie is yellow instead of orange based on this early animation model. So there's other little fun stuff like that. And my favorite bit, because I did a short video about this recently when me and Mark Boba Hicks, we did the full animated movie talk, is when Hot Rod and Cup are in the Sharkticon pit, Grimlock's just with them. He's just with them the whole time. I didn't even notice until I was reading an article pointing out the differences as I was rereading the comic for like the 10th time. I'm like, holy shit, Grimlock was just there. And the Quintessons are like, no, he's guilty as well. And you go. So really, they could have just stood and did nothing and just wait for Grimlock to transform, and he would have just handled it anyways. So it's only slightly different the movie, where he just turns up minutes later.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was a fun book. And in the old Marvel Age, up in the corner, was the first time they ever mentioned the Transformers. Just about anywhere, I think, because this was before the commercial was on TV, before the animated series was on. They just said Marvel Age, and it said, "Oh, coming soon is going to be the Transformers comic book." And then we had the comic book, we had the TV ad advertising the comic book, and later in the year we got the animated series. So that was all their pre-hype and promotion. And we also got Transformers UK, which ran for a good number of years. And Simon Furman, of course, worked on a lot of these and created a lot of original concepts and ideas that went on to influence other media, other TV shows and stuff. And some of it was kind of on purpose. Some of it was accidental by his own omission, where he's like, I can't remember half the things I did on that, And then there's like stuff turning up in Beast Wars that's referencing things he did. And he's like, I don't really remember. I'll have to go back and look at it myself to see what I actually put in there.
Yeah, I loved what Simon Furman did in the UK.
He did awesome stuff.
I'm a big fan of the Wreckers. I love that concept of
the Wreckers are cool.
The Autobot team that takes on the dirty jobs that no one else will. Yeah. I've actually got a whole shelf of the original Wreckers down here in their Generations forms.
Yeah, I've got a few of those. I've got like that Generation Springer, as well as I've got the movie Springer. Got in there Top Spin, Twin Twist. I got the older version of the Sandstorm. I got him in there. The Broadside that was in like the Titan's Return. Yeah, I've got like I've got like most of the core ones, and then I've got some other guys I've added in where it's not like nearly about 30 guys on my records thing now. Should get them out again sometime and do it. I did a group photo years ago, and I had other ones I put in there. I made up another combining robot just made out of nonsense ones and put them in there too.
Yeah,
but yeah, they got Transformers UK. Yeah, sorry.
Back in the Cyberverse line, they actually the first and only toy of Rack and Ruin, so I have him on that shelf as well.
Finally, there's been a few fan customs, but they finally actually made something. But yeah, the UK one ran for quite a number of years, and towards the kind of second half or last third, Simon Furman came over and was writing. When Budiansky was off, Simon Furman became the ongoing writer later on of the American book as well. So he did more stuff in there, and he did really cool stuff with Ultra Magnus and Galvatron, who's basically a time traveling or divergent reality Galvatron to the movie, which also kind of explains his weird colors, which are their old toy colors before they finalized the animation model. Has really cool rivalry with him. That kind of builds up more the City Commander thing, where these are the big guys, not so much Hot Rod, that have the rivalry, and did some really cool stories with them where they like die and get sealed alive inside a bloody volcano and all kinds of stuff. And he did more stuff with Unicron later on, where sometimes the animated show his heads floating around post movie. And there's one in the UK comics where they start rebuilding his body, and he almost like comes back again and nearly wipes people out. And that was a fun story. And then, of course, he did stuff with the Matrix and with like Primer. He created the character Primus, which later went on to be another major thing in Transformers.
Also created the bounty hunter Death's Head.
Oh, yes.
An unusual character. He started in the Transformers universe.
He's been in Doctor Who.
Yeah.
The Doctor Who
time he crossed over to Doctor Who, and then he wound up in Marvel 616.
Yeah. And then you had Death's Head 2 in the 90s. But he just seems to be like the weird American version. It's not as cool as the original.
Right.
But yeah, also got a Headmasters miniseries, which was another American one. And that is one of the weirdest Transformers comics to ever read. It's such a strange book when you read about all this. They took some of the stuff from that like Japanese anime, and then you got the toy line, and it's so confusing. And then you read this book, and I definitely prefer the Headmasters anime and what they did with that and that story. Whereas the American one is it's so clumsy and strange when you read. They're trying to force these concepts and stuff into it, which are just like quite nonsensical.
Yeah. Yeah, the whole idea of Headmasters was strange, especially when they did that the animated version.
Yeah, like the toys were fine, but just in the fiction, it was really weird.
Daniel became RC's head.
Just climbing inside their head. It's a bit Cronenbergian for me. And like, why is Fortress Maximus just ripping his own head off? And in the Marvel, like in Fortress Maximus is known as like. Well, he was known as like just the most gigantic Transformers toy ever made of the vintage toys. And in the anime series, he's absolutely gigantic. He's massive. Like he's much bigger than Metro. Metroplex only comes up to like about his knee. But in the Marvel one, he's not even particularly big. He's just a bit bigger than, I don't know, Grimlock, and that. He's not that big in it. It's quite strange. But it's still fun anyway, seeing these different reality Transformers stuff. And I think Spike became part of his Fortress Maximus. Spike or Daniel, one of them in the comic became part of him. And it was really confusing.
Spike became the head of Cerebros, and then Cerebros became the head of Fortress Maximus.
Yes,
like that. Yeah.
It's so confusing. And then you get these weird like bloody snake cobra looking dudes as well. Green. It's like some bloody rejects from that G.I. Joe movie.
Yeah,
like the animated movie, not the silly live action one.
Star Wars. Boy,
this was a massively popular book.
Absolutely. I love the early days of Marvel Star Wars because before the continuity and all the mythology was cemented.
Yeah. So
it was basically just a Wild West in space. You'd see the green space rabbit, my friend Jackson back here.
Yep.
Luke would land on a water planet where there'd be wooden ships and guys on serpents. Oh.
All right, clicked on the thing. I still listen to it. I just clicked the wrong button.
Yeah, Luke would land on a water planet where there'd be wooden pirate ships and guys riding serpents, and there'd be space pirates and all kind, the cyborg bounty hunter assassins, all crazy stuff. And I think the comic got less interesting as it went on, and as the movie mythology was taking form. Like right up until right up until Empire Strikes Back, because then after Empire Strikes Back, then you had that period where more rules were established. Like, okay, Han Solo's off the table. The love triangle is now gone. You can't have Luke and Vader meet in combat at all because we're doing that in the next movie. So it got more restricted as it went on. But the early days, which is the 2 volumes I just bought in the Epic collection, those were fantastic. Yeah. That's my idea of Star Wars. When it was like anything on the table, crazy space fantasy opera, anything goes.
Do you like any of the 90s Dark Horse ones? I haven't read. I've only read a couple of them here and there. But
I've read a few. I liked when they did Dark Empire.
And I think I read that. I read that one.
And they did like the post Return of the Jedi world. That was interesting to see. It's certainly more interesting than what Disney did.
Yeah, I've never been a big Star Wars person. I like the original 3 films, and I've always I'm just like a film nerd. I like films all from pretty much every decade since films been around, and I enjoy them as films, as pieces of cinema, as films. I like the cast a lot in them, and but if you ask me what's my favorite Harrison Ford, I'm going to say, well, I like him in, I don't know, Patriot Games and Indiana Jones more than I do in Star Wars. Not that he's bad in Star Wars. I'd certainly like it, but I'd rather watch him as like the star in another film as opposed to like the side character in that. But I love all the world building and just any of these films that have all sorts of amazing practical effects, like your Alien, Blade Runner, Star Wars, all the shipbuilding, the models and the maquettes and the amazing, like the Sid Mead doing all the concept art and that, all that sort of stuff to me is more interesting than the actual film itself.
Yep. Yeah, for me, Star Wars was best at that in the original years when I was a kid in '77, between the films, the comics, the Kenner toys, and half of it was what you were seeing in the films, and the other half was just your imagination before they,
Yeah.
And as soon as the prequels came along and started setting more rules about the, how the Force works and the midichlorians and all that nonsense.
Oh, that midichlorian stuff was bananas, man. That's nonsense. That doesn't exist in my world.
Yeah. I lose interest the more rules you apply to the universe, the more restrictions
I found,
put on it.
Some of those retro blasting commentaries he's done over the years about the classic films and about the sort of, what do you call it, expanded empire and novels and comics and stuff before, but the pre-2000 stuff basically, had some really interesting insights there and talking about who was actually responsible for what in the original films and who was directing and who was producing and doing story stuff. It's kind of like Lucas had this like vision stuff, but then a lot of other people contributed a hell of a lot to what Star Wars became.
Right.
And then when he come back, he's kind of like, no, forget that. I want to make it more mechanical and boring and less creative.
Yeah. Unfortunately.
And he seemed obsessed with all the technology side of stuff as far as the filmmaking when those prequels came out. And they're very, I don't think they've aged well. I mean, I'm not talking about the story. I mean, technologically, I don't think they've aged well. It's in that awkward period where things are a bit too shiny and weird looking in that film.
Yeah.
Those films.
And then he went back to the original 3 films and mucked with them with the visual
effects. Oh, that business. Yeah, I would happily. I don't own any version of any Star Wars anything as far as DVDs and that. And but if they had the regular theatrical versions, I would happily buy those on Blu-ray. But it's quite bizarre reading like the history and hearing podcasts and commentaries over the years about all that. I remember when my mate used to have them on VHS. And then when they brought those first VHS ones out, the special editions, and we're watching the thing, and it was like the Jabba the Hutt where it's with Han Solo, but he's kind of like going across the screen. It just looked bad. Never mind monkeying with the story. It just looked bad. It was not a good effect.
Yeah. The original films were very much of their time, and trying to update them with modern effects just looks wrong.
Yeah, and the thing that annoyed me is it's just like I don't care what I mean. If a director or writer creates something, then it's theirs. They can monkey with it much. Like, I don't give a shit. It doesn't affect me in my life in any way. But what is annoying is when it's had such a massive cultural impact and it's part of so many people's like childhoods and adulthoods too. And then it's like to go, here's this thing you really treasure and love. Okay, I'm taking it away, and now I'm just going to super glue some bits on it and make it look unrecognizable. And here you go, and the original version's gone, and you'll never see it again.
Right, exactly.
It's in like the Smithsonian or something, like the printed the first film and stuff. There would have a bit of break in there if we want it. I know there's fan special versions of that, but it's kind
I've got 2 copies of the
history to just like say no, you can't have it. It's just bullshit.
Yeah. I've got 2 copies of the Unmucked with trilogy on VHS. I don't know how long those are going to hold up, but
yeah, it's just a very strange thing to do that because like most other film directors and people like Ridley Scott, how many bloody cuts are there of Blade Runner now? He didn't take any of them away. Some of them weren't meant to exist. They were just work prints. But when they did those updated Blu-rays, now there's like 5 versions. It's the same film with minor differences in the scenes. Most of it not worth even worrying about. But I got a paperback book on that last year. It's 700 pages. Told you everything about everything you ever know about Blade Runner by a guy who's been documenting it since the 70s, who was like a fan, but also kind of like a film guy who actually had access to the set and followed all the cuts and everything. And great read, but like no one said, oh, let's take away all those alternate versions. They just went, here they are. They're all on the Blu-rays. Like if Lucas would just go, here's all the versions. They're all on here.
Right.
Cut the stupid Christmas special on there as a bonus. Why not? Just put everything in there. Put the Ewoks and Droids animated series on there. But put the bloody Yoda Clone Wars animated film on there. People forget even exists and don't acknowledge as a film that came to went to the cinema. It was a film.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
Consumers prefer choice.
Yeah. Yeah. It feels like for such a massive thing, there should just be like a big box set. I mean, I know there are box sets, but in box sets of the original films and all the other stuff, just make it, people would buy it, for sure.
Here's the Ewoks and the Droids comics that were published to tie in with the cartoons. Never paid much attention to those.
They had those toys as well too. Like even now they're doing like the retro card ones of bloody Ewoks and Droid stuff, which did actually look quite nice on the card base. And then Star Wars got obviously all the Marvel Disney stuff. They've been doing modern ones again. I had a brief look at some of these the other night, just to look at the artwork's very nice. I didn't know if I'd have stuff about the story, but the artwork was very nice in them.
Yeah, I don't think I've read many of the modern Marvel Star Wars comics.
They seem decent, but I don't know. I don't have any skin in the game. Like I wouldn't know if the story was bad as far as from a fan's point of view, if you care about those particular characters or that chronology or whatever.
Yeah, I think we reached a peak Star Wars in the past few years. There've been too much Star Wars. They need to cut back a little bit, make it special again.
They kind of learned the hard way on that because now they're going, even some of their dodgy Marvel films and TV shows are going, we're doing too many, we're going to do less now. And it's like, listening to a podcast the other night and they're going, they're saying, oh, they're cutting back. And they listed off everything they've done in the last few years. And it's like, well, there's been an average of 3 Marvel films the last 4 or 5 years. And there's still supposed to be another 3 at least next year. So like, what are they actually cutting back on?
Yeah.
But they're meant to be cutting back, I think, more on the TV shows somewhat.
There's too much stuff to make everything a must-see event.
Yeah,
like Syndrome said in The Incredibles, once everybody's special, then no one's special.
Yeah. I don't personally mind the volume of stuff they make because there's just so little to watch these days as far as new stuff that's actually worth watching. It's the quality of it. When it's garbage, I don't want to watch any of it. There's too many good classic films and TV shows in the last bloody 80 plus years to watch that I'll never catch up on in my lifetime. So I'm not going to complain too much of some of the stuff coming out now as garbage.
Right. Yeah, that's how I feel. There's enough entertainment that's already been created. that'll keep me occupied till I'm dead. I don't,
Yep. That's exactly the
make
same
any
for what I have.
more new stuff.
And then,
That's fine.
like, I'm sitting there going, man, I wish I had something else cool new to watch. And something comes along like, that Fallout show, that wasn't bad based on the video games and that. And I watched that in like probably one and a half nights. I'm like, okay, that's done. What do I do? Nothing new for another 6 months. I'm just going to watch Bosch again for the third or fourth time.
I really like the One Piece live action series. That was good.
Yeah.
I never watched the anime, but I like
I haven't
that series.
seen that. I mean, I've watched a fair bit of anime. I didn't even know there was a live action thing of it.
It was very well received from what I've read.
Yeah. Was it a Japanese or American series?
No, it was American. Netflix produced it.
I have to look that up because I didn't know it existed. I mean, I probably read something that existed however long ago, but don't remember it. I have to come back to One Piece. Like, I've watched all of Dragon Ball, which is like it's around 1,000 episodes, or like if you include all different shows in that.
I could never do that.
It was over several years, and like Naruto is fairly long running, but quite boring. And I stopped that about halfway. I just went, nah, this is dragged out and quite boring. Probably the comics are a bit better. And then One Piece is like pretty much the longest running animes ever are like One Piece and Pokemon, because they've both been going in like about 20 years. Yeah, Carl won't be doing any Dragon Ball marathons. Oh, some of the Dragon Ball stuff I've watched twice. So I just like it a lot.
Some of those anime just seem like an impenetrable wall.
Yeah.
Where do you begin?
There's been a shorter shows. Like, I mean, sometimes I'll find a 70s anime that's like 30 episodes instead of 50. I'm like, it's 30 episodes and you're done. And it's like, it's quite refreshing that it's not dragging the story out in that.
Yeah, I'd probably go back and watch some old Gatchaman or Space Battleship Yamato or something like that.
Yeah, there's more
all
stuff
the
there. I managed
robots.
to grab a hold of from the high seas last year, stuff that's just not available anywhere on bloody disc, especially in Australia, but had some good fan subtitles. And I think I've got Space Battleship Yamamoto and Captain Harlock and some other stuff I want to get into later this year. I got there's so many 70s anime shows I want to watch the full run of, just like really fantastic shows. A lot of good adult mature themes and stuff, and like just good storytelling that's like some of the best, comics and that too. But yeah, this has been good fun catching up with GOJITRON, talking about fun licensed comics and such. That's why I like to call it the GOJITRON Super Fun Time, Super Happy Terrific Hour. Right? There's like a trilogy now. We've done 3 like this.
Are we up to 3?
I was trying to think of some names the other day, and it's like you'd have like GOJITRON Strikes, GOJITRON Returns, and then like Son of GOJITRON. Like a trilogy.
Episode 1, the Goji Menace.
Well, there's enough now. I can actually make it. This 3 is enough. I can make a little mini playlist of like 3 Goji specific toys.
So what's next? What are we talking about next?
What's next? Goldberg. That's what's next. I'm not sure. We're gonna remember. Oh yeah, we're doing this weekend Predator 2. That's what we're doing on Barbie Joe show. And I'll probably do in a couple of weeks. I'm leaning towards either Muckman or Mondo Gecko for a little like solo figure Mutant Mondays thing. One of those two. They both start with them, so it works. And I've been meaning to those 2 for months, but like I will get to them because I've got quite a few figures of them and stuff to ramble on about. But yeah, we're doing those, and then actually we're doing an awesome thing coming up. We're doing because we've done what have we done? We've done Alien, Predator, the first ones in the last couple of weeks with Mark on Boba Joe, and next we're doing Aliens and Predator 2. So that's those 4 films. After that, we're doing a talk on the Kenner 90s Alien toys. I'm going to do a whole show just on that. And we'll definitely do more WrestleManias. And we're going to do we're nearly episode 50. And I thought, what are we going to do on that one? So we're going to do RoboCop Terminator, Aliens, Predator for number 50, and we'll talk about like the toy lines and that. Like I think kind of mainly about toy stuff, but we'll also kind of touch on the films because we do solo talks on all those films anyway, like RoboCop 1 and 2. And I thought we're going to have something for like a super show. Let's get a crossover thing like these bloody comics and that. Let's just jam every cool thing into one episode.
50 episodes already. Seems like you guys have been only doing that for a couple of months, and you're already up to 50 episodes.
In a row too. We haven't. Don't jinx it, but like 50 in a row as well. Like weekly, that is.
Very nice.
But yeah, we're gonna do more stuff later in the year. Like we're gonna do December. We'll definitely do Die Hard 2 because we did Die Hard last year. Do some more Christmas stuff. October, we're going to do some like horror themed things, and I can do like probably like Halloween and Thing, John Carpenter, so John Carpenter double thing. But yeah, plenty of cool topics, plenty more stuff to talk about. But yeah, I'm gonna get rid of that. But there we go. So on to that, thank you, Carl GOJITRON, for having another awesome talk about cool.
Thank you for having me on. Always ready to talk about comics.
Yeah, well, GOJITRON is like the oracle of nerd knowledge. It's like you need to find something out, you go to GOJITRON.
I get by.
There's something really obscure no one else knows about. It's like come and travel up the mountain and climb up to find this wise man and he'll have some wisdom for you.
I'm the old sensei with the long white beard, balancing on the stick.
Okay. So you got anything else going on? Anything else you want to plug or mention, or anything going on with the logo?
I try to put out a video a week, something.
Yeah, sorry, I forgot. You're always doing your own channel, of course.
Yeah,
I'm so used to seeing on so many guests on things and talks, but you're always doing awesome.
Always looking for something to talk about, a little outside the box. I think my next video is going to be about Johnny Quest.
Yeah.
And then I'm going to do one on the Marvel animation of the 1970s and 80s. Cool. So those should be fun.
Will that include the Spider-Man where it's got the J. Jonah one where he's always like fairly poorly animated? It's always like yelling.
Yep. Absolutely. The Fantastic Four with Herbie the Robot.
Yeah, the Herbie Robot.
And the Spider-Woman show.
Don't set yourself on fire.
Yep. Spider-Woman show where they ripped off Star Wars for a couple of episodes.
Yeah, that's weird.
Yep. Always trying to find something different to talk about, not just the same old stuff that everyone else is doing.
Sometimes I stumble onto blogs like I don't know, there's one I think it's like Superman something page, been around for many years, and they'll do whole articles on like here's this whole era of Superman media and every actor and show that have been on and every version of animation and who voiced it. I love seeing stuff like that.
Yep. Always something to talk about.
Yeah, as well as cool, awesome toy videos you regularly have, all sorts of weird creatures, as well as like figures we know, like Marvel and X-Men and whatnot, but also it always got like cool odd stuff and monsters and things. And
I try to think outside the box. I can't even see the box from where I am. It's so far away.
Yeah, I like when you do those like little theme videos, or it's like little face-off of different figures and stuff. They're cool.
Thank you very much.
Okay, I'm going to say good night, good luck, good evening, good morning, depending on where you are in the world, and then we're going to play the outro.
Thanks for watching, everyone. See you next time.
Thanks for tuning in, people.
Welcome to the GOJITRON Fun Time Super Happy Terrific Hour. Stay tuned and stay groovy.